yesterday morning, I was doing my meditation and went through it all, did my positive intelligence work, did some prayer, and then I thought, I need some more to fill me up, to feel more aligned and grounded. And so I was searching on YouTube for things to listen to, and I ended up listening to a Simon Sinek 20-minute thing. We had a little bit in there, a little snippet from some talk that he did. And he told this amazing, great story about two lumberjacks at the very beginning of that video. And so the story is that there are two lumberjacks, and I'm just going to go with their guys, okay? I'm just doing that. So two lumberjacks are chopping wood all day, every day. They start at the same time, they finish at the same time. Lumberjack 1 goes and cuts whatever amount of wood he cuts. Lumberjack 2 always ends up cutting more, always ends up chopping more wood. And so this goes on for days, this goes on for weeks, this goes on for months, and finally, Lumberjack 1 goes to Lumberjack 2 and goes, what is the deal here? We start at the same time, we finish at the same time. You even take an hour-long break, and you still end up chopping more wood than I do every single time. What do you do in that hour? And Lumberjack 2 turns to Lumberjack 1 and he says, I sharpen my axe. I sharpen my axe. So, wow! If that isn't a metaphor, I mean, you could take it very literally as in like he takes a break, he sort of relaxes, he like sharpens his axe so he can actually chop more wood. Okay, fine. But to me, of course, this was a complete spiritual metaphor for we really need to get out of the minutia and the daily sort of relative conventional stuff that we are doing all the time, to pause so that we can not just take a break in that pause, but we can actually realign. We can center, we can ground ourselves. We can get out of all of the stuff that is going on around us, the to-do list, the expectations, the jobs, the tasks, whatever, so that we can come back to remembering who we truly are, what we truly are. And the more often we do that, then guess what? The easier, the better we are at navigating all of the stuff that we have on those to-do lists, right? All of those tasks that make up our day. So this made me think back to, and I couldn't believe it when I realized this, 5 years ago, when at this time of year, there was the state of emergency that was declared in BC for COVID, and COVID was unfolding all over the world. And I remember feeling at that time, like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, people are like diving into fear so fast right now. And I had just finished, actually, I was just finishing practitioner studies. So I wasn't even like, I was on the ministerial path, but I was still in the middle of practitioner studies. And so I was just like a month and a half away or something from my panels. And I was just like, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm like focusing, and what you focus on expands. So why are people focusing on all of this fear and the statistics and whatever? Why is no one talking about how many people are surviving? Why is nobody talking about the positive stuff that's happening? It's like doom and gloom and fear, which is not to discount all the stuff that happened. That's not what I'm saying here. But I would, was like, what we focus on expands. So what is it that we're expanding with our collective consciousness? And then as things began to ramp up, and as the collective consciousness got stronger and more anchored in fear, I totally let myself get sucked in. And it was hard. It was really hard. I mean, I had just finished 4 years of spiritual and consciousness studies. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is exactly what I just went to school for. This is part of my life's calling. And like, I can't even navigate, from 1 hour to the next, from one moment to the next. Yeah. And then, I thought, well, wait a second. Like, what is it that I want to focus on? I'm in charge of my life. Yes, there's all these things, these mandates and policies and all this stuff coming around and happening, but I'm the one who gets to decide how I experience my life. I'm the one who gets to decide how I respond to what is going on. And I got to tell you, even though Glenn and I were on the same page for most of the stuff, there were times where it was really challenging for us to relate to each other. And so what I ended up doing, I made a conscious choice to sharpen my axe. And so my talk title today is Sharpen Your Axe. And so what did that look like 5 years ago? Well, I was already meditating and I was already praying because that's just part of my life. It became part of my life when I started my foundational studies. But what it meant was getting more prayer partners, praying more often, longer, meditating more often, for longer, and being so much more intentional about those times when I would go into prayer, when I would go into meditation, the people that I spent time with, breath work. That's when breath work started for me. And so sharpening my axe was all about finding whatever way I could to come back to remembering who I am. That I am so much bigger, more powerful, and resilient than any of the stuff that was going on all over the world. And I mean, that was a heavy-duty time. And this, again, not to dismiss, it wasn't a war happening somewhere else. It wasn't, some kind of pandemic happening somewhere else. This was a global thing that people were so tuned into, that so focused on. It was really challenging not to get sucked into that collective consciousness. And so that meant for me about 5 times a day. I mean, there are people, certain cultures and religions who pray 5 times a day, right? That's part of what their religion is all about. But for me, it got to that point where I had prayer partners like every other day. I was praying and meditating, every few hours because I needed that extra boost, that extra sharpening of the axe so I could continue to go and chop wood, which really meant to navigate my life. And it got to the point for me where I also realized I couldn't work anymore where I was working because there was so much focus on negativity. There was so much focus on fear that it just got in the way of me getting through the day. And so I really, really appreciated this story of the 2 lumberjacks and the sharpening of the axe because it's just such a delightful reminder of how we're the ones who are responsible for how we experience life. And when we have what feels like a million things to do, what is it that we're focusing on? I mean, someone once told me you can get more done in 6 days with 1 day off than you can if you work all 7 days. And it's not just because you get exhausted, but it's because you forget who you are. It's because you're doing all the time instead of taking time to be. Taking time to remember, to reflect, to connect, to align, to remind, like literally reorganize your mind so that you can literally remember and put yourself back together. Not that you were ever broken or whatever to begin with, but just shift your focus and attention on who and what you truly are rather than all of the stuff that is driving you crazy or the challenges that you're facing with someone in a conversation that you've just had. So, sharpening your axe, that is what I'm focusing on today. Now, I've talked about our Noticing Ninjas group that Glenn and I belong to, that we've been going to for over a year at this point. And every Tuesday, we get together, our little group of at least 5, if not 6. And every week, we commit to something. And so last week, I committed, because of the way that I'd been feeling for weeks, to amping up my meditation again. And I'm like, why did it take me so long? Why did it take me so long? Because as soon as I did it that first day, I'm like, I need to spend more time in this, feeling like this so I can navigate all of this. And what a difference it has made in just the last week. And so that was my commitment, and I stuck with it, and I'm still sticking with it. And so for me, this is about pausing. This is about pausing and opening up to what's in that pause, in that space. And so that took me back to this Radical Acceptance book by Tara Brach, which I think I actually read something out of last week. And in there's a quote by Henry David Thoreau. And he says, "Dwell as near as possible to the channel in which your life flows." And so that to me, again, it's a much prettier and more elegant way of saying it. But again, it's like sharpen your axe. Dwell as near as possible to the channel in which your life flows. Yeah. So what are you immersing yourself in? What are you flowing in? And how are you flowing? Are you going with the flow, with the current? Or are you trying to, be a salmon and swim and battle upstream? Either way, dwelling as near as possible to the channel in which your life flows is an opportunity to, going back to our affirmation, live life with more openness, commitment, authenticity, and love. Back to Tara Brach. In the pause, rather than getting lost in our reactive thoughts and actions, we become directly aware of what is happening in our body. And this is part of why I offered what I offered last week. It was about the only thing I could do when I was standing here was to notice what was happening in my body. And so I kind of feel like I tore a page out of Authentic Relating, took a little bit out of Tara Brach's book, and also out of Positive Intelligence, which is one of the modalities that I use and am trained in, because Positive Intelligence is all about getting into the body so that you can get out of your mind where things can be driving you crazy. And when you get into the body, you are literally shifting to a different part of your brain where you can't be in anxiety and overwhelm at the same time when you are focusing on the sensation of touch, when you are tuning in to what you are hearing, when you're tasting something, when you're smelling something, or when you're focusing on your breath. And so how often during the day do we even take time to just pause and do that? Whether it's just the sensation of touch, something that you're wearing, to listen to whatever the furthest sound is away where you really have to stretch your ear to pay attention, and then tune into what is the closest sound. Maybe it's the ringing in your ears. Maybe it's your heartbeat. Maybe it's your breath. And what about focusing on the breath? Just as it moves in and out, in and out, in and out. You can't help but calm down, feel more centered, feel more grounded, feel more present. And when we do that, the conversations, the stuff, the people, the feelings and the thoughts, they go to the side. They're still there, but we can navigate them as this, peace and calm and awareness, rather than, oh my God, right? So, when I tend to relationships with openness, commitment, authenticity, and love, I experience life as it truly is rather than what it appears to be. That is our affirmation for the month, and that is my invitation to you to open up to how is it that you're living your life from one now moment to the next. What is it that you are focusing on? Where is it that you are directing your attention? Are you sharpening your axe? And so the quote that I want to leave you with is, taking time to sharpen your axe is consciously choosing to sharpen your focus, to intentionally direct your energy, to pause and realign. It's also taking time to notice what's happening, especially in the body, with genuine curiosity rather than being unconsciously sucked into a reoccurring loop of anxiety, overwhelm, pain, and or fear, which can seemingly pull us out of alignment emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. Taking time to sharpen your axe is experiencing life as it truly is, with openness, commitment, authenticity, and love. Thank you, and so it is.